Hi everyone! I just want to make a quick one today, talking a little bit about the idea of having a core practice kind of in your spiritual arsenal, so to speak, that you know for you is what kind of takes you to that place of reverence and that place of a kind of altered state of consciousness, a place of feeling connectedness and just feeling in tune and just at one, and whatever it is that you're looking for out of your spiritual practice. I was thinking about that this morning, I think it was, or maybe it was yesterday, about how it's definitely useful, I think, to have a ritual structure, to have more complicated things that you tend to fall back on. Like, I know that when I'm kind of foundering a little bit with my spiritual practice, it is really good for me to go back and look at what it was I used to do, to revert to kind of simple ritual structures and practices and so on that are familiar to me, that I know worked before. But what I'm talking about is not even something as complex as an entire ritual or a daily practice or anything like that. I'm really talking about just that one single practice, that one single action that you can take that will make you feel the most kind of immediately connected and at one, whatever it is, whatever the word is for you, that is what you're looking for. And I do recommend, that's a side note that I might make another video on actually, is having an idea in your head of what it is that you are looking to achieve out of your practice when you're sitting down at the altar or to do whatever it is that you do. For me anyway, it's very useful to know what exactly it is that I am trying to achieve, or at least having some words that resonate for me and that make sense and kind of encapsulate that for me. But yeah, so whatever it is that you're aiming for, I personally have noticed over the years that the deeper I've developed my meditation practice, the more that has become the crux of my spiritual practice for me. So although I think in the beginning I wouldn't have said so, at the moment where I'm at now, I would say that if I had to just pick one single practice that I know is going to take me into that space, take me into that experience, it's going to be meditation. And it doesn't have to be perfect meditation, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to even be long. As long as I can kind of get myself into that kind of state and mindset and put myself into that kind of expectation, like to kind of, like, it doesn't have to be perfect in that I don't have to like feel like my mind is completely still in order for it to work or anything like that. It's as long as I am sitting with the intention of meditating. I notice that more often than not, as long as I can kind of settle into that intention, so to speak, I can find myself slipping into that state that I'm looking for and find myself feeling connected. And I think it's easy for me personally to overlook that and to kind of underestimate the power of meditation for me, because in the back of my head I always kind of think, oh, you know, meditation, everyone does that, it's been quite secularized. There's a whole lot of stuff around the idea of meditation for me, you know, relating to, is it more a self-development thing, is it really religious? There's so much stuff going on there for me around meditation that I think sometimes I think of it as like a secondary act, as this sort of a backing kind of, yeah, like a background side project that I have going on with my spiritual practice, something that is going to bolster the real deal, something that is like skill building for me for like the real thing of actually doing ritual. Whereas in all honesty, that's the kind of the main guts of what I do in sacred space, is move towards a state of meditation, get into that meditative state. Like, that's what I'm aiming for. So yeah, I've been kind of noticing that and thinking, you know, I need to stop denigrating meditation for me. I need to start thinking of it more seriously. And this has been an ongoing process. I think in the last year or so I've been getting on board with that more and thinking about what meditation means to me and noticing that and so on. But I would definitely recommend that you have an honest conversation with yourself about what it is that is your kind of key core practice, so that you know what it is that you should come back to when there's just one thing and you've only time to do one thing, or you're just feeling so unmotivated. Like, is there just one thing that you know that you can just say, okay, I'll just do this, and that is going to get you into a positive spiritual place, if you know what I mean. I mean, for me, I would say a very close second, and it's even simpler, is the act of lighting candles on the altar. And I would say that maybe, well, the two things are kind of go hand in hand for me. I would say that if I'm kind of meditating in some other space, like if I were to go into a meditative state in another room, in another place, it wouldn't necessarily feel as sacred to me. It wouldn't necessarily feel like I was achieving that state. Sometimes when I'm in nature, that will kind of wash over me organically, and I will find myself in having a response to the place, the space that I'm in. And it feels very much like that meditative state, and that, so it definitely can happen away from the altar. But for me, those two things kind of go hand in hand. For me, meditating, going into the meditative state, experiencing what it is that I'm looking for in spiritual practice, that happens when I sit down at the altar and I light specific candles with a couple of prayers, and then I sit and meditate. But like the actual act of just lighting the candles in and of itself, you may not want to kind of attach the kind of idea of meditation to that. That might not work for you, for example. So that could be your core practice. And I think for a lot of years before I got more into meditation, before I realized that that was really going to be the cornerstone of my practice, lighting candles on the altar was just always my go-to. And I definitely, you know, learned this from my Wiccan days, and having specific candles that represent specific ideas or concepts or archetypes or goddesses or etc, etc. Having those specific candles on the altar and lighting them with intention has always been a really strong and positive and moving experience for me. Another thing that you might want to do is, you know, working with prayer beads, just working through a set of prayer beads. That has been something that I've done a lot. It's not something that's always stuck for me, so I wouldn't say it is a cornerstone, but it's a great practice. It could be doing something with crystals, something with tarot cards. But yeah, I would just say that's something that's been helpful to me to think about what it is. And I think it's what it is that, you know, gets me most easily and readily into that state. And I think it actually helps with getting out of a spiritual rut and doing something at the altar, even though I feel like, oh, I don't have the energy or the time to do much. I have started saying to myself, no, you know what, you've got 5 minutes. All it takes is 5 minutes, sit down, light the candles and sit in a meditative state. Even less than 5 minutes, it's something. And it really actually does make a difference. Like, it just requires me to actually turn up and be in that experience just for a couple of moments, and that's enough. So yeah, what are your kind of core cornerstone practices? I'm curious to hear. How many of you have meditation at the center? Lighting candles is obviously a really common one, kind of across the board, maybe especially for people in the kind of witchy community. But yeah, I'd be really curious to know if any of you have any other practices that are really just the thing that you always come back to, that kind of brings you home, spiritually speaking. And yeah, I will talk to you again soon. I hope, like I say, I might make another video talking about that idea of having kind of spiritual keywords, like things that you're like aiming to experience or bring into yourself when you're doing your spiritual practice. But yeah, take care, and I will talk to you soon.